March 31st, 1943, 0900 hours, somewhere over the Burmese jungle between Rangoon and Mandalay. A man hangs suspended beneath a white silk canopy at 5,000 feet. His right arm bleeding through his flight jacket, his M1911 pistol gripped in his left hand. And 20 meters below him, a Japanese Ki-43 fighter spirals toward the earth, smoke pouring from its cockpit. The pilot slumped forward against his harness with a single bullet wound through his skull. This is the only documented case in World War II where a soldier in a parachute shot down an enemy aircraft with a sidearm. The man's name was Owen John Baggett, Second Lieutenant, United States Army Air Forces, co-pilot of a B-24 Liberator bomber. And in the next 28 minutes, you're going to learn exactly how he accomplished what every manual, every physicist, every tactical analyst said was mathematically impossible. The field reports are clear, the physics are brutal, the witnesses are dead. But the story survived. August 29th, 1920, Graham, Texas, Young County. Owen Baggett came into this world the son of John and Mary Pearl Owen Baggett, in a town where people either run away and never look back, or they stay rooted forever. There's no middle ground. Small town Texas in the 20s, Dust Bowl approaching, depression looming. This was the America that forged men who didn't talk much but knew how to work. Baggett wasn't a shooter, wasn't a farm boy with a rifle since age 6, wasn't some backwoods marksman. He was a drum major. Hardin-Simmons University in Abilene, class of 1941, led the marching band, kept rhythm, wore the tall hat with the feather. This was his claim to fame. A musician. Not an infantryman, not a fighter pilot, not even close to the profile of what you'd expect for what comes next. After graduation, he did what thousands of young men did in that brief window before Pearl Harbor. He went to New York, took a job as a defense contractor, worked in an office on Wall Street, buttoned shirts, paperwork, city life. The kind of existence where the most dangerous thing you face is missing your subway stop. Then December 7th, 1941 happened. Within weeks, Owen Baggett walked away from that desk, that safe urban existence, that predictable future, and enlisted in the Army Air Corps. Not because he was drafted, not because he had to, because when the call came, he answered. Completed pilot training on July 26, 1942, New Columbus Army Flying School, received his commission as second lieutenant, and by December of that same year, he was 10,000 miles from Texas, stationed in Pandaveswar, Bengal, British India, assigned to the 7th Bomb Group, 9th Squadron. He was a co-pilot on the B-24 Liberator, the consolidated B-24, a 4-engine heavy bomber with a wingspan of 110 feet, cruising speed of 215 miles per hour, ceiling of 28,000 feet, and a crew of 10 men whose lives depended on every rivet holding, every engine firing, every decision made in fractions of seconds. The historical records describe him with 3 words: quick smile, kind words, not the profile of a killer, not the temperament of someone who'd end up in hand-to-hand combat with a fighter plane at altitude. Just a good man, doing his job, trying to survive long enough to see home again. March 31st, 1943, mission briefing, 0530 hours, Pandaveswar Airfield. The 9th Squadron receives orders to strike a railway bridge at Pine Mana, Burma, strategic choke point between Rangoon and Mandalay, the kind of target that stops supply lines, cripples logistics, wins wars one bridge at a time. Intelligence notes, the bridge sits near 2 Japanese air bases. Expect heavy fighter resistance. Plan accordingly. 12 B-24s lift off into the pre-dawn darkness, Baggett in the right seat of his aircraft, Lieutenant Lloyd Jensen at the controls. The formation tightens as they cross into hostile airspace. Bomb bay doors will open at the initial point. Then straight and level for the run. No evasive maneuvers, no deviation. Just hold course and pray the flak doesn't find you. They never made it to the target. 0915 hours, approximately 60 miles from Pienmana. The formation is jumped by 13 Ki-43 Hayabusa fighters from the Japanese 64th Cent AI. Sleek single-engine interceptors with a top speed of just over 300 miles per hour, armed with two 7.7mm machine guns, flown by pilots who'd been hunting American bombers since the war began. 13 against 12. The math was bad from the start. Baggett's B-24 takes hits in the first pass. Tracers stitching across the fuselage, puncturing fuel tanks, severing hydraulic lines, shredding the thin aluminum skin that's all that stands between the crew and 30,000 feet of empty air. Then the oxygen tanks rupture, not the main supply, but the emergency reserves, and suddenly there's pure O2 mixing with aviation fuel vapor, and every spark is a potential funeral pyre. Lieutenant Jensen takes a round through the chest. The hydraulic fluid spraying across the instrument panel looks exactly like blood, because at this point there's both. Sergeant Samuel Crosstick, the flight engineer, grabs two fire extinguishers and climbs out onto the catwalk above the open bomb bay, 10,000 feet of nothing below him, trying to put out fires in fuel tanks that keep reigniting because the rounds won't stop coming. The intercommunication system dies. No headset chatter, no warnings, no coordination. Baggett has to use hand signals to tell the gunners to prepare to bail out, because there's no other way to communicate. And the smoke is filling the fuselage now. Thick and black and toxic. The kind that burns your lungs and blinds you and kills you before the crash ever does. Lieutenant Jensen makes the call every pilot dreads. Abandon aircraft. Ring the bailout bell, except the bell doesn't work because the electrical system is shredded. So it's hand signals and shouting and hoping everyone understands, because in 60 seconds this aircraft is either going to explode or auger in, and either way, anyone still inside is dead. Baggett goes out the nose hatch, pulls his ripcord, feels the jarring shock as the canopy deploys. And for exactly 3 seconds, there's relief. The kind of primal joy that comes from knowing you're not going to burn alive in a metal coffin. Then the Ki-43s circle back. What happens next violates every convention of warfare established since World War I. The Geneva Conventions are clear. Aircrew who've bailed out are hors de combat, out of combat. You don't shoot them. You don't strafe them. They're effectively surrendered. But the pilots of the 64th Cent AI either didn't know or didn't care. They begin systematically shooting the paratroopers. Methodically, clinically, like hunters picking off ducks. One pass, then another, the 7.7mm rounds punching through silk and flesh and bone, men dying in their harnesses before they ever touch ground. Bodies going limp, canopies collapsing, falling like broken puppets. 2 of Baggett's crew are killed in the air. Baggett takes a round through his right arm. The pain is immediate and sharp but not incapacitating. Adrenaline sees to that. But it's not the wound that changes everything. It's what he sees next. Another crewman, he doesn't record who, gets hit center mass. The body jerks once and goes still. And the Ki-43 that did it banks around for another pass, canopy open, pilot's head visible, looking for more targets. And something in Owen Baggett's mind shifts. He'd accepted that he was going to die. That much was clear from the moment the B-24 took fire. But he'd assumed it would be fast. An explosion or a crash. Not this. Not being hunted like an animal. Not watching friends murdered while helpless. Not giving the enemy the satisfaction of killing him without a fight. If he was going to die, he decided in that instant he was going to make it cost them. Standard operating procedure for this situation does not exist. Because this situation is not supposed to exist. The field manuals cover bailout procedures, parachute deployment, emergency landings, evasion tactics once you're on the ground. But there is no chapter titled What to Do When Enemy Fighters Strafe Your Parachute. Because according to every military doctrine written up to that point, enemy fighters don't strafe parachutes. except they were. So Baggett faced a trilemma, 3 options, all of them fatal. Option 1, play dead. Go limp in the harness. Hope the pilot assumes you're already KIA and moves on to another target. 2 of his crewmates tried this. Both were shot anyway. Pilots apparently preferred to confirm kills rather than assume. Option 2, fight back with the only weapon available, the M19 1145 caliber pistol in his shoulder holster. Except you're dangling from a parachute at 5,000 feet, swaying in the wind, target moving at over 200 miles per hour. Effective range of the 45 is maybe 200 feet under ideal conditions, and these are the opposite of ideal conditions. This is suicide by mathematics. Option 3, find an exploit in the system. A vulnerability so specific and so temporary that it only exists for a few seconds at most. And hope you're skilled enough or lucky enough to capitalize on it before the window closes. Standard military doctrine said option 1 was the only rational choice. Owen Baggett chose option 3. To understand why this could even theoretically work, you need to understand the Ki-43 Hayabusa. The Nakajima Ki-43, Allied reporting name Oscar, one of the most agile fighters in the Pacific theater, lightweight construction, low wing loading, could outturn almost anything the Allies flew in 1943. But that agility came at a cost. The Ki-43's top speed was only 307 miles per hour, slower than most American fighters, and its stall speed, the minimum velocity at which it could maintain controlled flight, was relatively high for such a light aircraft, somewhere around 70 to 80 miles per hour depending on configuration and altitude. When a Ki-43 pilot wanted to examine a parachutist up close, confirm a kill, check if the target was genuinely dead or just playing possum, he had to slow down dramatically, drop his airspeed to barely above stall, nose up to maintain altitude, sometimes even open the canopy for better visibility because the greenhouse canopy had visibility issues in certain angles. This put the aircraft in an aerodynamic state called region of reverse command, where you're so slow that you need more power to go slower, where any disruption, any sudden control input, any loss of concentration can snap you into a stall spin, and at 5,000 feet you have maybe 10-15 seconds to recover before you're digging a crater. And if the pilot is suddenly incapacitated, say by a bullet through the brain, there is no recovery. The M19 1145 ACP, designed by John Browning, adopted by the U.S. military in 1911, standard sidearm for officers. 7-round magazine, 230 grain full metal jacket bullet, muzzle velocity of 830 feet per second, effective range officially listed as 164 feet. But effective range is a statistical concept. It means the range at which 50% of shooters can hit a man-sized target 50% of the time under controlled conditions. It does not mean the weapon is useless beyond that range. It means accuracy degrades, but if the target is close enough, slow enough, predictable enough, the physics still work. Baggett is descending at roughly 16 feet per second. The standard descent rate for a T5 parachute, he's oscillating maybe 5 feet side to side. He's at approximately 4,800 feet altitude when he sees the Ki-43 approach. The fighter is nose up, airspeed dropping, maybe 90 miles per hour, pilot's attention focused downward toward the corpse in the parachute. And the canopy is open. The distance closes to an estimated 60-70 feet, well within the ballistic envelope of the 45. Baggett has hidden the pistol against his leg during the bailout. Most aircrew would have lost it in the slipstream or abandoned it to reduce weight. But he kept it, maybe instinct, maybe foresight, doesn't matter now. He raises the M1911 with his left hand, right arm useless from the bullet wound, no time to aim properly, no stable shooting platform, just point and press. 4 rounds. 4 shots from a man suspended in mid-air at a target moving relative to him at roughly 30 feet per second closure rate, accounting for wind drift, parachute oscillation, adrenaline tremors, and the cognitive load of knowing this is your last chance. The first round misses. The second misses. The third hits the cowling. The fourth goes through the open canopy and strikes the pilot in the head. The effect is instantaneous. The pilot slumps forward, hands off the stick, throttle setting unchanged, aircraft in nose-up attitude at 90 miles per hour, right at the edge of controlled flight, and then it departs. The Key 43 snap rolls left, enters an inverted spin, nose drops, the rotation accelerates, the altitude bleeds away, and by the time the aircraft impacts the jungle floor 3 miles away, it's traveling near vertical at terminal velocity. There is no recovery, no ejection, just physics converting kinetic energy to heat and fragmentation. Baggett never saw it hit the ground. He was too busy descending, trying to prepare for landing in hostile territory, trying to process what had just happened, trying to stay conscious because the shock and blood loss were starting to catch up with the adrenaline. He landed in a rice paddy, was captured within hours by Japanese infantry, spent the next 2.5 years in a prisoner of war camp, and spent most of that time believing he'd missed, that the Key 43 had crashed due to mechanical failure or pilot error, that his shots had been desperation theater, not actual combat effectiveness. He had no confirmation, no witnesses, no way to verify, until Colonel Harry Melton showed up. Melton, commander of the 311th Fighter Group, had been captured separately and ended up in the same camp, and during a conversation about aircraft losses, mentioned that a Japanese colonel had told him about a Ki-43 pilot from the 64th Cent AI who'd been found dead in his crashed aircraft on March 31st, 1943. Single gunshot wound to the head. The pilot had been thrown clear during the crash sequence, the body recovered, examined, and the Japanese attributed the wound to ground fire. Some lucky shot from a defending position near Pienmana. Filed the paperwork, moved on. But Melton did the math. No Allied ground forces near Pienmana that day. No anti-aircraft positions within 20 miles of where that Ki-43 went down. The only Americans in the area were the B-24 crews, and most of them were dead or captured. Which meant the only possible explanation was the one that sounded impossible. Someone had shot that pilot from a parachute. Melton asked around the camp, found Baggett, confirmed the date, the circumstances, the wound on Baggett's arm, and told him, "That was you. You shot him down." Baggett didn't believe it, said he'd fired but couldn't confirm impact. It was too chaotic, too fast. Probably just coincidence. Melton planned to write a formal after-action report once the war ended, document the whole incident, get Baggett the recognition he deserved, but Colonel Harry Melton never made it home. The transport ship carrying him to Japan was sunk by Allied submarine. Irony of all ironies. Killed by friendly fire that didn't know there were American POWs aboard, and with Melton went the only official witness to the Japanese report, the only man who could corroborate the story through enemy documentation. The war ended, Baggett came home, returned to duty, eventually retired as a colonel in 1973 after 31 years of service, and never once claimed credit for shooting down that Ki-43. Never filed for a medal, never sought recognition, because without Melton's testimony, without the Japanese records which officially listed 0 losses that day, there was no proof. Just his word, and the word of a man hanging from a parachute is worth exactly nothing against official military records. In 1996, John L. Frisbee, editor of Air Force magazine, heard the story third hand, tracked Baggett down, interviewed him. Baggett was 76 years old by then, still reluctant to claim the kill, still cautious about overstating what happened. Frisbee did his own investigation, pulled mission reports, cross-referenced dates, interviewed surviving crew members from the 7th Bomb Group, and concluded based on 3 points of evidence. 1. No other Allied forces in the area could have engaged that Key 43. 2. The altitude of 4,000 to 5,000 feet gave sufficient time for a pilot to recover from an involuntary stall unless incapacitated. 3. The Japanese colonel's statement to Melton, though secondhand, matched the date, location, and circumstances exactly. There is no reasonable doubt, Frisbee wrote, that Second Lieutenant Owen Baggett performed an act of valor unique in the history of aerial combat. But the Smithsonian doesn't list it, the Air Force Museum doesn't commemorate it. The official records remain silent, because the standard of evidence for military awards requires contemporary documentation, eyewitness statements from officers, enemy confirmation, and Baggett had none of those. He had only the knowledge that on March 31st, 1943, at approximately 0920 hours, somewhere over the Burmese jungle, he'd done the impossible, and that would have to be enough. Owen Baggett spent his post-military career working for Litton Industries as a defense contractor, the same job he'd left in 1941. Full circle, lived quietly in Texas, never sought publicity, never wrote a memoir, never went on speaking tours. But those who knew him said he spent considerable time with children, sponsored Commander for a Day programs where kids could spend a day learning about military service, leadership, responsibility, teaching the next generation that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about acting despite the fear, about making the hard choice when all choices are hard. He died on July 27th, 2006, in New Braunfels, Texas, 85 years old, surrounded by family. And until the end, when asked directly if he'd shot down that Key 43, he'd smile that quick smile the records mention and say, "I fired at him. I know that much for certain." The tactical lesson here isn't replicable. You cannot train paratroopers to shoot down fighter aircraft. The variables are too chaotic, the probability too low, the doctrine too absurd. No manual will ever include this technique. No instructor will ever teach it, because it worked exactly once in the entire war, possibly in all of military history. But the strategic lesson is profound. The enemy's strength is also his vulnerability. The moment of maximum threat is often the moment of maximum exposure, and the only truly fatal mistake is assuming you have no options left. The historical lesson is this. Owen Baggett is the only documented case of a parachutist shooting down an aircraft with a sidearm in World War II, corroborated by multiple independent sources, consistent with the physics, supported by enemy intelligence, and yet his name appears in no official register of American aces, no list of medal recipients, no monument to aerial combat. Because sometimes the truth is too strange for the paperwork to accommodate, and the bureaucracy demands proof that no longer exists, and the only witness who mattered died before he could testify. History is not what happened. It's what we can prove happened, and those are not always the same thing. But every year, a small group of aviation historians, World War II researchers, and former Air Force personnel gather to remember the date, March 31st, 1943, the day a co-pilot with a quick smile and kind words proved that even when falling from the sky, defenseless, wounded, outgunned, and outmatched, you still get a vote. That vote might be 4 rounds from a 45 at 70 feet, but it counts.